The day started early. The sun was just beginning to climb over the hills surrounding Bujumbura. Today is May 3rd, 2026. The city was already alive with a low hum of activity. Motorbikes buzzed through the streets like persistent insects. Markets were opening, spilling their colors and smells onto the dusty sidewalks. My mission was different. I wasn't here for the city comforts. I was heading north towards the border with Rwanda. My goal was to reach one of the most isolated communities in Burundi, the Twa people. They are the forgotten first people of these lands, and I wanted to understand their story, their struggle, and their incredible spirit of survival. My guide, a local man named Jean-Pierre, met me by our sturdy 4x4. His smile was wide, but his eyes held the quiet wisdom of someone who knew these roads and the stories they held. He checked the tires and the extra fuel cans strapped to the roof. Where we were going, there are no gas stations. There are no paved roads. There is only the raw, untamed landscape of Burundi. We loaded our supplies, bags of rice, maize flour, beans, and boxes of soap and salt. These weren't just provisions for our trip. They were small tokens of respect for the community we hoped to visit. In the wild, you learn quickly that survival is often about what you can give, not just what you can take. Leaving the city limits of Bujumbura felt like crossing an invisible boundary. The noise began to fade, replaced by the sounds of the countryside. The air grew cleaner, fresher. It was filled with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. We passed by the shores of Lake Tanganyika, its vast blue expanse stretching out to the horizon. Fishermen in their wooden pirogues were already out on the water, their nets cast wide in the morning light. It was a peaceful scene, a world away from the concrete and chaos we had just left. But I knew this peace was just the start of our journey. The real challenge, the real adventure, lay ahead in the hills. The initial part of the drive was deceptive. The road was paved for a while, winding through lush green tea plantations that carpeted the hillsides like a patchwork quilt. Women in brightly colored fabrics moved gracefully between the rows of tea bushes, their hands deftly plucking the tender leaves. It was a beautiful, almost idyllic picture of rural life. But this was the accessible part of Burundi, the part that visitors often see. Our destination was far beyond this. Jean-Pierre pointed towards a distant line of rugged forest-covered mountains. "That is where we go," he said simply. "There, the road ends, and the real journey begins." His words hung in the air, a reminder that we were about to step into a different world. The smooth tarmac soon gave way to a deeply rutted dirt track. Our 4x4 lurched and groaned, fighting for grip on the red earth. The landscape transformed dramatically. The neatly manicured tea plantations were replaced by wilder, more rugged terrain. We drove through dense banana groves, the massive leaves forming a green canopy over the road. Small villages, clusters of mud brick houses with thatched or tin roofs, appeared and disappeared as we climbed higher into the hills. Children would hear the sound of our engine and run out to the roadside, waving with huge, excited smiles. Their laughter was a pure, joyful sound that echoed through the valleys. It was a stark contrast to the cautious, hurried pace of city life. Life out here is stripped down to the essentials. We saw women carrying heavy loads of water on their heads, walking for miles from the nearest stream. Men worked the steep hillsides with hand tools, their bodies strong and lean, from a lifetime of physical labor. There were no supermarkets or shopping malls. There were only small, open-air markets where people traded vegetables, charcoal, and handmade goods. This was a world governed by the sun and the seasons, not by the clock. The further we drove from Bujumbura, the more it felt like we were traveling back in time, to a simpler but harder way of life. The resilience of the people was etched on their faces, and in the way they carried themselves. The journey was a constant battle between our vehicle and the terrain. We crossed rickety wooden bridges that seemed barely able to hold our weight. We forged through shallow rivers where the road had been washed away. At one point, we had to get out and use our winch to pull the truck out of a deep mud pit. Jean-Pierre handled every obstacle with calm expertise. He knew this land. He understood its challenges. He pointed out different types of trees and told me their local names and uses, from medicine to construction. This wasn't just a physical journey. It was an education in how to read and respect the natural environment. As the afternoon wore on, the villages became smaller and more sparse. The forest grew thicker, closing in around us. The air was thick with the chorus of insects and the calls of unseen birds. This was the true heart of Burundi, a land of breathtaking beauty and profound isolation. The contrast was powerful. On one hand, there was the incredible richness of nature, the vibrant greens, the deep red of the soil, the endless sky. On the other hand, you could feel the hardship, the daily struggle for existence that defined life for the people who called this place home. We were getting close. The home of the Twa was just beyond the next ridge, hidden away from the modern world. After hours of relentless driving, Jean-Pierre finally slowed the vehicle. He pointed to a collection of small, round huts nestled in a clearing on the hillside. "We are here," he announced. This was it, a Twa village. My first impression was of extreme simplicity and poverty. The homes were constructed from mud and sticks with roofs made of grass and leaves. They were tiny, barely large enough for a family to shelter inside. There was no electricity, no running water. A few chickens scratched in the dust, and a thin dog watched us with weary eyes. It was a scene of material scarcity that would shock most people from the developed world. But then the people emerged from their homes. At first, they were hesitant, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and caution. Strangers are a rare sight here. A few children, their bellies swollen from malnutrition, peeked out from behind their mother's legs. But there was no hostility. Jean-Pierre spoke to an elder in Kirundi, his tone soft and respectful. He explained who we were and why we had come. Slowly, the initial apprehension melted away, replaced by a quiet, dignified welcome. A woman offered us a small wooden stool to sit on, a gesture of hospitality that was deeply touching in its simplicity. What struck me most was the people themselves. They were smaller in stature than the other ethnic groups in Burundi, a physical trait of their pygmy ancestry. Their faces were incredibly expressive, their eyes holding a depth that spoke of a long and difficult history. Despite the visible signs of hardship, the worn-out clothes, the lack of basic amenities, there was an undeniable strength in their posture. They stood tall, they looked you directly in the eye. This was not a community defined by victimhood. This was a community of survivors, people who had held onto their identity against all odds. As we sat with the village elder, more people gathered around us. The atmosphere shifted from cautious observation to gentle engagement. The children, bolder now, crept closer, their large, dark eyes wide with wonder. An old man with a face like a carved map began to play a simple melody on a handmade flute. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, a timeless tune that seemed to carry the spirit of the forest itself. In that moment, surrounded by these small huts and the immense green hills, I realized that my initial impression of poverty was incomplete. There was a richness here that couldn't be measured in money or possessions. It was a richness of culture, of community, and of spirit. As the sun climbed higher, the rhythm of the village revealed itself. Daily life for the Twa is a constant cycle of work, driven by the need for food and water. The women are the backbone of the community. Before dawn, they set out on the long trek to the nearest stream, balancing heavy clay pots or plastic containers on their heads. It's a journey of several kilometers over steep and difficult terrain. Their strength and endurance are incredible. They return with water for drinking, cooking, and washing. Then, their work continues as they tend to small garden plots, prepare the day's single meal, usually a simple porridge of maize or cassava, and care for the children. The men's roles have changed drastically over the generations. Traditionally, they were the hunters of the forest. Now, with the forests gone, they must find other ways to survive. Many have become skilled potters, a craft passed down through generations. I watched one man, his hands covered in wet clay, expertly shaping a pot on a simple wheel. His movements were precise and fluid, a form of artistry born from necessity. These pots are their primary source of income. They trade them in nearby markets for food or a little cash. Others seek out casual labor on the farms of their Hutu or Tutsi neighbors, a difficult and often demeaning existence for a people who were once masters of their own domain. Family and community are the glue that holds everything together. In the absence of material wealth, human connection is their most valuable asset. Children are raised by the entire village. Elders are respected for their wisdom and knowledge. In the evenings, families gather around small fires outside their huts. This is a time for storytelling, for sharing the day's news, and for reinforcing the bonds that are so crucial for their survival. Laughter rings out in the cool, night air. a powerful testament to their ability to find joy, even in the most challenging circumstances. It's a powerful lesson in what truly matters. I saw this community spirit in action throughout the day. When a family runs out of food, their neighbors share what little they have. When a hut needs to be repaired, the whole village comes together to help gather materials and rebuild it. This deep-seated sense of interdependence is a survival mechanism honed over centuries. They understand that they are stronger together. This communal bond is their greatest strength, their shield against a world that has largely forgotten them. It's a stark contrast to the individualism that often defines modern society. Here, survival is not a solo mission, it's a team effort. To understand the Twa of today, you have to understand their past. Their story is a tragic one, deeply intertwined with the forests that once covered these hills. For countless generations, the Twa were the indigenous people of the Great Lakes region, living as nomadic hunter-gatherers. They were masters of the forest, possessing an encyclopedic knowledge of its plants and animals. The forest provided everything they needed: food, medicine, shelter, and the very foundation of their spiritual and cultural identity. They lived in harmony with their environment, taking only what they needed to survive. They were the original guardians of this land. The slow-motion catastrophe for the Twa began with the arrival of agriculturalist groups, the Hutu, and later the Tutsi. Forests were cleared to make way for farms and grazing land. This process accelerated dramatically in the 20th century. Deforestation, driven by population growth and economic pressures, destroyed the Twa's traditional habitat. Their hunting grounds vanished. They were pushed to the margins of society, forced to live on land that nobody else wanted. This loss of land was not just an economic blow, it was an existential crisis. It severed their connection to their ancestors, their culture, and their entire way of life. This dispossession has led to systemic marginalization and extreme poverty. The Tilawa are often treated as outcasts, facing deep-seated discrimination from the majority populations. They are denied access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. Without land, they have no political voice. They are a minority in every sense of the word, invisible to the state and ignored by development programs. The challenges they face are immense: chronic malnutrition, high rates of child mortality, and a lack of basic sanitation. It's a brutal, daily struggle for survival on the very edge of existence. Yet despite this crushing history of loss and exclusion, their spirit has not been broken. This is what is so incredible. They have held on to their identity with fierce determination. Their pottery is not just a craft, it's a link to their past. Their music and stories keep their ancestral memory alive. They have adapted, finding new ways to survive in a world that has taken everything from them. Their resilience is a quiet but powerful act of defiance. They refuse to be erased. They continue to exist, to raise their children, and to hope for a better future. A future where they can reclaim their dignity and their rightful place in the world. Before leaving Bujumbura, we had packed the 4x4 with essential supplies. This wasn't about charity. In the wild, you learn that mutual respect and exchange are key to survival and building trust. It was a small gesture, a way of showing that we came as friends, not just as observers. After spending some time with the village elder and gaining the community's trust, Jean-Pierre and I began to unload the bags from our truck. We brought out the large sacks of maize flour, rice and beans, along with boxes of salt, sugar, and soap. These are basic items for most of us, but for this community, they represented a significant resource. The reaction was not what you might expect. There was no clamor, no pushing or shoving. Instead, the villagers gathered in an orderly, dignified manner. The elder took charge, ensuring a fair distribution. He called forward the head of each family, one by one. A portion of the food was carefully measured out for each household. The women accepted the supplies with quiet words of thanks and a small bow of the head. Their gratitude was palpable, but it was expressed with a profound sense of grace and composure. It was a humbling experience to witness. It was a powerful reminder that dignity is not dependent on one's material circumstances. The most moving part of the exchange for me was with the children. We had brought a bag of simple sweets and some notebooks and pencils. When I handed a small piece of candy to a little girl, her eyes lit up with a joy so pure and overwhelming it almost brought me to tears. She ran off to show her friends, her laughter echoing through the village. Later, I saw a group of older children huddled together, carefully drawing pictures in one of the notebooks with a single pencil, taking turns with intense concentration. This small gift had opened up a world of creativity and play. It was a stark reminder of how little it takes to bring happiness and opportunity. This act of sharing broke down the final barriers between us. It transformed us from strangers into guests, into friends. In the afternoon, some of the men invited me to sit with them as they worked on their pottery, showing me their techniques. The women offered me a taste of their simple meal. The children, no longer shy, tugged at my hand, wanting to play. In giving a little, we had received so much more in return, a sense of connection, a feeling of shared humanity. It was a powerful lesson. True connection isn't built on grand gestures, but on small, sincere acts of kindness and mutual respect. As the day came to a close, a deep sense of reflection settled over me. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The beauty of the landscape was breathtaking, a stark and almost cruel contrast to the hardship that defined the lives of the people who inhabited it. This was the great paradox of the Twa's existence, living in a paradise that they could no longer call their own, surrounded by a natural world that they were no longer allowed to be a part of. The beauty and the struggle were two sides of the same coin, and you couldn't understand one without seeing the other. What I will carry with me forever is the memory of their warmth and gratitude. These are a people who have lost almost everything: their land, their way of life, their place in society. They face hunger, disease, and discrimination on a daily basis. By all accounts, they have every reason to be bitter, to be angry, to be closed off to the world. Yet, they are not. They welcomed us, two strangers, into their community with open hearts. They shared what little they had. They showed us kindness and treated us with dignity. Their ability to hold on to their grace and humanity in the face of such adversity is the ultimate testament to the strength of the human spirit. My journey to the Twa village was a powerful lesson in perspective. It forced me to confront the comfortable realities of my own life and the vast inequalities that define our world. We often measure wealth in terms of money, possessions, and status, but the Twa have a different kind of wealth. It's a wealth of community, of resilience, of cultural identity, and of an unbreakable connection to each other. They have mastered the art of survival, not just in a physical sense, but in a spiritual one as well. They have learned to find joy in small moments, to rely on each other, and to never give up hope. Leaving the village as darkness fell, I looked back at the small fires twinkling in the clearing. It was a tiny island of light and warmth in a vast, dark wilderness. The Twa people are a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, hope can endure. Their story is not just one of tragedy, it is a powerful saga of survival and resilience. It challenges us to look beyond our own comfortable lives, to practice empathy, and to recognize our shared humanity. The Twa have much to teach the world about courage, community, and the incredible, unbreakable will to survive. Their quiet flame of hope continues to burn brightly against